Okay, in this tutorial, we're just going to create a simple form that has 4 or 5 different data fields on it and have that form use both the post method and the get method to connect and send data to the form action page so that you can see the difference in how it works. Okay. So we'll go to our files, go back to the top page, collect new file, and we're going to call this one form generic, because this is just going to be a generic form. Double click on it, and oops, it moved. So let's close that. Go back to files, form generic. There we go. Alright, so this is our form. We'll go into split view. So if I'm going to create a form, first thing I want to do is insert and go to, there's my form section, and say insert form. Now if you notice the HTML that got created, we have an ID for our form, a name for our form, those things usually match, and we have our method, post. Down here in the property editor, we can make changes, we can change that. We have a box for our action, so if we click on here, we get a list of our pages in our site. So we can scroll through, and for right now we want to do our form action generic. So that's going to be our action. You can see the action line got added here in our HTML. And so now once we have that created, we want to make sure that whatever elements we put on the page appear inside these form tags. And you can see up here in the design view, we've got this dashed line that tells us where the form is. So if we click inside of there, now we'll see whatever elements we add will go inside the form begin and the form end tag. Now, one common thing to do when creating forms is to use a table to lay out the form. So we're going to create a table, and let's do 5 rows like it says here, 2 columns. Alright, border thickness of 1. I'm going to change this border thickness to 0 because we're going to use the table for layout purposes, but we don't really need lines around the cells of the table to be displayed. And then I'm going to stick with the left header, so I'll use the left column to be my labels for the fields in the form. So I click OK, and we can see our table now is within the form tags. All right. So let's just do a couple typical things that you might see in a form. Let's have a field for first name, and we can even do first name and last name. We can do them as 2 separate fields because you can have fields side by side. So this is our label. Then now over here on the right, we're going to insert, go to form, and we want a field for entering text because, you know, your name is just text. Alright, now this came up with its own label. Well, we have our label over in the column on the other side of the row. So we're going to grab the label it created and move it to go around our actual label, and then we can get rid of that text field that they typed in. All right. And let's see. So actually, we said we're going to do two separate fields, first name and last name. So we really want the label to go around first name. All right, well, since we know this field is going to be for first name, we want to change that. We want to change the name of this field to be first name, and we want to change the ID for this field to be first name. Okay, now that probably, absolutely, could all have been done down here in the properties box as well. So we could have come down here. Now we can go in, we can do a couple different things. We can say, well, we want the size of the first name field. Let's put 20, and let's do the max length is 30. So that way it'll be wide enough to show 20 characters, but they can only type 30. We won't have a default value. Let's see, we want it to be a required field, so they have to type something in. It belongs on form 1, and I believe that's all we need to set. So that takes care of our first name field. So now after that, let's do the same thing. Insert, form, we want a text field. We want to do the same. Let's go down, make this a little easier. This time we'll go to the properties box, and we'll change the name of the field to be last name. Tab out of it, and now you can see all those 3 places we changed manually last time all changed automatically. And let's go, and we're going to move our label to go here around last name. Get rid of that generic part. Refresh. Go back on this field. All right, so let's do the same thing. 20 for the size, 30 for the max length. We don't have a default value. We want it to be a required field. You can experiment with some of these other things. It belongs to the form 1 form. And so that takes care of our field there. All right, if you're collecting data on a person, oftentimes you want to know what gender they are. So let's go in, insert, form, and then gender is an either or choice. There's a couple different ways you can do that. You can do gender with a radio group, so that you would have a radio button that is a either or choice. You could do it with a select field, which would give you a drop-down list. So let's go ahead and set up a radio group though, and we'll see how this works. So our radio group is going to be named gender. Okay, we want our label to be something easily read by humans, but we want the value to be the code, for instance, that we would enter into our database. So the label male, female will display on the screen, but we'll just send an M or an F in our form data. Okay. And then layout using, I'm going to do the layout using line breaks, and then I'm actually going to go and take the line breaks out so that the radio buttons will be side by side instead of one on top of the other. So we hit OK, and you see how it created it one on top of the other. But if we go down, look at the code, then we see there's this line break in between. And if we take the line break out and refresh, now we can see the radio buttons are side by side. Alright, so let's click on these guys. Let's check our properties. Gender. We're not going to check anything by default. We want to make sure this is assigned to the Form 1 form, and we want this to be required. So they have to pick one or the other, but we're not going to set any particular value checked to begin with. All right, let's see if we're collecting data on a person. We might want to know what their birthday is. So let's do that. And then this is the power of Dreamweaver. If we go down to form, we can see that one of our form field types is a date field. So I'm going to pick that date field and go in, and let's change the name of our field to be birth date. And let's move our label like we did before to go around the label that we're actually using. And then we can get rid of their default label. And so now we have this birthday field. We could set a default value here if we wanted to, but we don't. We want to make it required. They have to enter a birthday. Min, max, I guess you could specify something so that they can't put in a date too old or a date that's off in the future. And let's assign it to Form 1. Make sure it knows that it's part of Form 1. Alright, so that's all set up good for a date field. And let's see. Let's think of something that would have a number. So let's say we're going to ask them what grade they're in. Insert form, and so now we can go up and say, all right, we want to enter a number. Let's change the name of the field, and we'll do the same thing with our label. Put the label around the text that we're actually using. Get rid of their generic label. Alright, so now we have grade. This one, we want it to be required. Now we can set a min and a max here, because generally speaking, we have a range between, let's say this is high school students that we're collecting information on. So the minimum would be 9, the maximum would be 12, the step would be 1, so they can only pick 9, 10, 11, or 12. So that has that set up. Alright, and then just for fun, let's throw in one more field. You can see on the form list, if you go and look at form, there's all kinds of different things going on. Let's see, here's one for color. Let's see. Oh, I don't like where that ended up. So we'll do edit, undo. Let's make the field be favorite color. Now let's insert form color. We'll name the field fav color. Let's do the same thing with our label. Favorite color. Let's see, label for fav. Oh, that should be a end label. And then that part goes out. All right, refresh. So we're on our favorite color field. We make sure it's assigned to form 1. We can't make it required. It's not a choice. Everything else will be okay. Let me show you. We can set a default value. Purple is my favorite color. So we're going to set purple to be the default color for that field. All right, so we've got 5 fields created. If we go back up to our form definition, we can see that our method right now is get, and we're sending to the form action generic form. So let's save this. Go to our browser. And we want to bring up this form generic page. And there's our form. So first name, last name, male, birthday. Now look at this. Just by specifying that this was a date field, we get these nice little tools for popping up a calendar. We can go through, pick different months, go way back in time if we had to. Okay, I'm just going to pick something convenient now so that we're done. All right, now look, because we specified a range in a step, somebody can go, they can type in a value if they want, or they can use the up and down arrow keys to pick between the choices. And then finally, favorite color. If we click on that, wow, it brings up the color thing. I can pick a south blue. Okay, there's our favorite color. Now, the one thing I absolutely forgot, notice there's no button on this form for submitting the form. So go back to Dreamweaver, go down toward the end of our form. All right, there's the end of our table. There's the end of the form. So let's put a break in there. And then at that point, we want to insert form, and we want a submit button. All right, and that's all there is to that. Nice and easy. File, save. Back to our browser page, refresh. Okay, so you can see we're back to no data, but now we have a submit button. So fill in data, male, I was born a couple days ago. I'm in 9th grade. I pick blue for my color. Now I have everything. I hit the submit button. So now if you look up here in the URL, look at all this stuff that was added to the URL. So if we look at that, that's all the field names and the data. That was part of the URL. And then we can see now, we see all of that in our get method. Okay. Now normally you don't want your users to see all this detail, especially if you're coding values like gender, different things like that behind the scenes. You want all of this information to be hidden. So that's where the post method comes in. So if we click on form, down here in our properties, we change this to be the post method, and we save this. Going back to our browser, let's go back, refresh. Now we're going to be using this page with the post method. So we'll still fill in our data, mail, pop up a calendar. Let's go back a couple months. Our grade is 11 this time. And we'll still pick a blue for our color. Submit. So now you can see with that submit, there's no information up here in the URL. And all of the information gets to the form action page coming through the post array variable instead of through the get array variable.